Kevin Reed parked his old pickup truck in the back lot of the Grand Palace Hotel. The vehicle looked out of place among the sleek luxury cars and polished SUVs. Kevin adjusted the gray custodial uniform he'd been wearing all day, wiping a smudge of dirt from the sleeve. His normally well-groomed appearance was hidden beneath a baseball cap, pulled low over his eyes, and several days of stubble on his face. No one would recognize him like this, which was exactly the point. Kevin had spent the last 3 weeks working on a challenging new role, playing a janitor who discovers corruption in a major corporation. To prepare, he'd been shadowing real maintenance workers across the city, learning their routines, movements, and most importantly, how the world treated them when they thought no one was watching. Today had been particularly eye-opening. Kevin had mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms, and emptied trash at an office building downtown. His muscles ached from the physical labor, but the emotional weight of being invisible to those around him had affected him more deeply. People had walked past him without a glance. Conversations had stopped when he entered rooms, and one executive had even snapped at him for interrupting a meeting when he was just doing his job. Kevin reached for his phone and checked the time. 10:30 p.m. He was exhausted but needed to grab his things from his suite before tomorrow's early morning shoot. He'd originally planned to change clothes, but something told him to stay in character a little longer. After all, the hotel staff already knew he was doing research for his role. They'd been supportive of his method acting approach, though they expected him to use the service entrance when dressed like this. Just a quick in and out, Kevin muttered to himself, grabbing his keycard from his pocket. He decided to use the main entrance tonight. It would save him time, and at this hour, the lobby would likely be empty anyway. As Kevin pushed through the revolving doors into the gleaming marble lobby, he immediately realized his mistake. The hotel was hosting some kind of event. Men in expensive suits and women in elegant dresses mingled around a champagne fountain, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Crystal chandeliers bathed everything in warm golden light. Kevin hesitated, considering a quick retreat to the service entrance, but then shrugged. He was too tired for the long walk around the building. He'd just keep his head down and head straight for the elevators. No one would notice him anyway. That was the whole point of this exercise. He moved quietly along the edge of the lobby, past groups of chatting guests who, true to form, didn't spare him a glance. The invisibility of the uniform was working just as it had all day. He was nearly at the elevator bank when a stern voice called out, "Excuse me, where do you think you're going?" Kevin turned to see a man in a tailored suit approaching. The man's name tag identified him as Raymond Phillips, the hotel's assistant manager. Kevin had met him briefly during check-in 2 weeks ago, though he looked very different now. "Just heading up," Kevin said, keeping his voice low and his face partially hidden under the brim of his cap. "Staff uses the service elevator," Raymond said sharply, loud enough that nearby guests turned to watch. "You know better than to come through the main lobby during an event. Especially looking like that." He gestured dismissively at Kevin's dirty uniform. Kevin was about to explain when Raymond cut him off. "This is the third time this month that maintenance has ignored protocol. I don't care if you're new. There's no excuse for disrupting our guests." The service entrance is clearly marked. A small crowd was gathering now, curious hotel guests watching the interaction with interest. Kevin felt his face grow warm. He was used to being in the spotlight, but not like this. Not being dressed down like a misbehaving child. "I understand," Kevin said quietly. "I'll go around." "And you'll report to your supervisor tomorrow," Raymond added, seemingly enjoying the authority he wielded. "What's your name?" Kevin hesitated. He could reveal himself now and end this uncomfortable scene, but something held him back. This experience, this feeling of being powerless and humiliated, was exactly what his character would face. He was living it in real time. "Kevin," he answered simply. "Kevin what?" Raymond demanded. Before Kevin could decide how to respond, a woman's voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here, Raymond?" The crowd parted as Lisa Chen, the hotel's general manager, approached. Kevin had met her several times during his stay. She was smart, professional, and had been particularly helpful in arranging his unusual research accommodations. Just directing this maintenance worker to the proper entrance. "Ms. Chen," Raymond explained, his tone suddenly more respectful. He tried to cut through the Westbrook Foundation event. Lisa looked at Kevin for a moment, her expression unreadable. Kevin braced himself for recognition, for the moment when his cover would be blown and the entire dynamic would shift. But she simply nodded. "I see, I'll handle this, Raymond. Please check on the kitchen. They needed assistance with the late dessert service." Raymond seemed disappointed to lose his audience, but nodded and walked away. The onlookers, realizing the spectacle was over, slowly drifted back to their conversations and champagne. Lisa waited until they were relatively alone before speaking again, her voice low. "Are you okay, Mr. Reed?" Kevin finally looked up, meeting her eyes. "You recognized me," she gave a small smile. "Of course. Though I must say, your commitment to your roles is impressive. Most actors I've hosted just read books and watched documentaries." Kevin sighed, feeling the tension leave his shoulders. "I believe in experiencing things firsthand when possible. Today has been educational." "I imagine so," Lisa said, glancing at the crowd. "Would you like me to escort you to the elevators? Or would that break character?" Kevin considered this. "Actually, if you could just treat me like any other maintenance worker, that would be helpful. I still need to process everything I've experienced today." Lisa nodded professionally. "Of course. Please follow me, and I'll show you to the service elevator." As they walked away from the main lobby, Kevin noticed how guests who had been openly staring at him during Raymond's reprimand now avoided eye contact. He was invisible again, just another worker in a uniform. "Thank you for not exposing me back there," Kevin said quietly as they reached a plain door marked "Staff Only." "It wasn't my place," Lisa replied. "But I'm curious, what exactly are you hoping to learn from all this?" Kevin paused with his hand on the door. "Perspective," he said finally. "My character goes from being invisible to being the most important person in the room when he uncovers corruption. I needed to understand what invisible really feels like." Lisa's expression softened. "Well, for what it's worth, Raymond will be mortified when he finds out who he just scolded. Small consolation, perhaps." "Actually," Kevin said, a thoughtful look crossing his face, "I'd prefer if he didn't find out just yet. In fact, I have an idea if you're willing to help me." Lisa raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of idea?" "One that might teach a valuable lesson," Kevin replied, the first genuine smile of the day crossing his face. "And it might make tomorrow very interesting for everyone in this hotel." As he explained his plan, Lisa's expression changed from surprise to amusement. "That's rather devious, Mr. Reed," she said when he finished. "But also perfect. So you'll help me?" Lisa considered for a moment, then nodded decisively. "Yes, on one condition." "Name it," Kevin said. "When this is all over, I want to know if it helped. If understanding what it's like to be invisible made you a better actor. Or perhaps a better person." Kevin hadn't expected that. He looked at Lisa with new respect, recognizing that she saw beyond the famous actor to the person trying to understand a different slice of humanity. "Deal," he said, extending his hand. As they shook on their agreement, Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning of sorts, not just for the arrogant Raymond, but perhaps for everyone who'd overlooked the man in the custodial uniform. Including, he realized with sudden clarity, himself. What had begun as research for a role had become something more meaningful. And as Kevin rode the service elevator up to his floor, he found himself rehearsing not lines from a script, but what he would say tomorrow when the tables were turned and everyone who had ignored him was forced to see him, really see him, for the first time. The stage was set. The players were unwitting, and Kevin Reed, hidden behind his custodian's uniform, was about to deliver the performance of a lifetime, one without cameras, without directors, but with a lesson that neither he nor anyone else at the Grand Palace Hotel would soon forget. Kevin woke up early the next morning, his mind already racing with anticipation. He'd slept surprisingly well despite the previous day's events, perhaps because he finally understood something essential about the character he was playing. The humiliation in the lobby had been uncomfortable but also invaluable. Now he knew exactly how it felt to be dismissed based solely on appearance. He glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. Perfect. According to Lisa, the morning staff meeting started at 7 hours, which gave him just enough time to prepare. Kevin showered quickly, then stood before the mirror contemplating his appearance. Today required a transformation of a different sort. He shaved carefully, removing every trace of stubble. He styled his hair with precision, the way fans expected to see it. From his closet, he selected a crisp charcoal suit that his stylist had sent over, simple but unmistakably expensive, with the subtle details that signaled wealth to those who noticed such things. As he fastened his watch, a limited edition piece he'd received after his last blockbuster, Kevin smiled at his reflection. The contrast between this image and yesterday's Custodian couldn't have been more striking. That was exactly the point. At 6:50, he sent a text to Lisa. "Ready when you are." Her reply came immediately. "Perfect timing. Meeting room B, ground floor, East Wing. All department heads and staff representatives will be there." Kevin straightened his tie one last time and headed downstairs, taking the main elevator this time. The morning lobby was different from the previous night. No glamorous party, just business travelers checking out and staff moving purposefully to their stations. This time, people noticed him. A group of tourists whispered excitedly, pointing in his direction. A bellhop nearly dropped a suitcase. The front desk clerk immediately abandoned her current guest, her face lighting up with recognition. "Mr. Reed, is there anything I can help you with this morning?" she asked eagerly. Kevin smiled warmly. "No, thank you. Just heading to a meeting." He continued walking, noting how paths cleared before him, how smiles appeared on faces, how suddenly everyone was eager to make eye contact. The invisibility of yesterday had been replaced with hypervisibility, the extreme opposite experience. Both, he realized, were equally unnatural. When Kevin reached meeting room B, he found Lisa waiting outside. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she said professionally, though he caught the glint of amusement in her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" "Absolutely," he replied. "And please, after yesterday, I think you've earned the right to call me Kevin." Lisa smiled. "Then let's do this, Kevin." She pushed open the door, revealing a large conference room filled with about 30 hotel employees seated around a U-shaped table arrangement. Raymond Phillips was standing at the front, mid-sentence about quarterly cleaning protocols, a PowerPoint slide projected behind him. Every head turned as Lisa entered. Then as Kevin followed her in, the room fell completely silent. "I apologize for interrupting," Lisa said calmly, "but I wanted to introduce a special guest. Most of you know that Kevin Reed has been staying with us while filming his new movie." Kevin could pinpoint the exact moment that Raymond recognized him, the assistant manager's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly as he connected the famous actor standing before him with the custodian he'd berated the night before. "Mr. Reed has been kind enough to join us this morning," Lisa continued smoothly.
"He has some observations to share about his stay."
"Particularly regarding his experiences as part of his preparation for his new role." She gestured for Kevin to take the floor, then stepped back, giving him the stage. Kevin moved to the front of the room, feeling every eye on him. As an actor, he was accustomed to attention, but this was different. This wasn't about entertainment. It was about something much more meaningful. "Thank you, Lisa," he began, his voice warm and conversational. "First, I want to say that my experience at this hotel has been exceptional in many ways. The accommodations are top-notch, and many of you have gone above and beyond to make my stay comfortable." He paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with various staff members. "Some of you might be wondering why I'm dressed like this today, when just yesterday I was wearing a maintenance uniform and cleaning supplies." Kevin smiled slightly as murmurs rippled. Through the room, Raymond looked like he might faint. "I've been preparing for a role where I play someone who works behind the scenes, someone essential but often overlooked. I believe that to portray a character authentically, I need to understand their reality. So for the past 3 weeks, I've been shadowing custodial staff across the city, learning what their days are like, what challenges they face." Kevin paused, letting his words sink in. "Yesterday taught me something profound. I experienced firsthand how differently people treat you based solely on what you're wearing and what job they think you have." The room had gone completely still. Even the usual shuffling of papers and clicking of pens had stopped. When I entered this hotel as a maintenance worker, I became invisible. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. People walked past without acknowledgement. And when I tried to use the main elevator, Kevin's gaze moved deliberately to Raymond, who was now staring fixedly at the floor. I was publicly scolded and humiliated for daring to use the same entrance as the guests. The silence in the room was deafening. Then this morning, I put on this suit and suddenly I'm visible again. More than visible, I'm important. Doors open for me. People smile. Everyone wants to help me. Kevin let that sink in for a moment before continuing. I'm not sharing this to embarrass anyone or to complain. I'm sharing this because my experience yesterday was just one day of my life. For your maintenance staff, your housekeepers, your kitchen workers, that's their daily reality. He looked around the room, noting the uncomfortable expressions, the downcast eyes, but also the few nods of recognition, particularly from those wearing service uniforms. The people who make this hotel function, who clean the rooms, fix the problems, prepare the food, carry the luggage, they deserve the same respect as any guest. They deserve to be seen. Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out his key card. I'd like to try something if you'll all humor me. I'm going to put this key card on the table here. He placed it on the conference table. This gives access to my suite on the top floor. It has the same technology, the same purpose as the key cards your maintenance staff carry. He took a step back. The only difference is who's holding it. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. I came here today not to shame anyone, but to ask for your help. My job as an actor is to tell stories that matter. Stories that might change how people see the world, even in small ways. The story I want to tell through this character is about seeing the invisible people, recognizing that dignity doesn't come from a job title or a uniform or social status. Kevin looked directly at Raymond again, but his expression wasn't angry or triumphant. It was kind. Sometimes we all need a reminder of what it feels like to be on the other side. I know I did. And I'm grateful for that lesson, even if it was uncomfortable in the moment. Raymond finally looked up, his face a mixture of embarrassment and something else, perhaps understanding. Lisa stepped forward. Thank you, Kevin. I think you've given us all something important to consider. She turned to the room. I'd like everyone to take a moment to reflect on how we treat each other and our guests, all our guests, regardless of their position or appearance. The silence that followed was thoughtful rather than uncomfortable. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. It was a middle-aged man in a maintenance uniform, not unlike the one Kevin had worn yesterday. Slowly, others joined in until the entire room was applauding. Kevin hadn't expected this response. He'd anticipated awkwardness, perhaps resentment. Instead, he saw recognition in many faces, as if his words had given voice to something many had felt but few had expressed. As the applause died down, Raymond approached him, visibly nervous. Mr. Reed, he said quietly, I want to apologize for my behavior yesterday. It was unprofessional and unkind. There's no excuse. Kevin could have dismissed the apology or accepted it coolly. Instead, he extended his hand. We all have moments we're not proud of, he said. The question is what we learn from them. As they shook hands, Kevin felt the atmosphere in the room shift. Something had changed. Perhaps something small in the grand scheme of things, but important nonetheless. A lesson had been delivered and received, and somewhere in his mind, the character he was preparing to play became a little more real, a little more nuanced. That, after all, had been the point of this exercise, to understand. But Kevin realized he'd gained something beyond research for a role. He'd glimpsed a truth about human nature, about visibility and invisibility, about dignity and respect. And in the process, he'd possibly changed how 30 people might treat others tomorrow. Not a bad morning's work, he thought. Not bad at all. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind for Kevin. After the staff meeting, he'd planned to head directly to the film set, but news of what had happened spread quickly through the hotel. By the time he reached the lobby, a small crowd of employees had gathered, not to ask for autographs or photos, but to share their own stories. An older housekeeper told him about working 30 years in luxury hotels, becoming so accustomed to being overlooked that she'd developed the habit of making herself smaller when guests were present. A young bellhop described how differently people treated him, depending on whether he was in uniform or his street clothes. The head chef explained the strange disconnect of creating magnificent meals that earned the hotel awards while eating his own lunch in a windowless break room. Kevin listened to each person, struck by how his simple experiment had opened a floodgate of experiences that rarely found voice. When he finally made it outside to his waiting car, he was running nearly an hour late for his call time, but he didn't regret a minute of it. The director's going to kill me, he told his driver, Tom, who had been with him for several years. Tom laughed as he pulled away from the curb. I doubt it. Not when you tell him why you're late. Kevin leaned back in his seat, watching the city scroll by outside the window. I went in thinking I'd teach them something, but I'm the one who got schooled. That's usually how it works, Tom replied, catching Kevin's eye in the rearview mirror. Best lessons are the ones that go both ways. When they arrived at the studio, Kevin rushed to his trailer where his costume team was waiting. As they helped him transform into his character, David Hayes, the janitor who uncovers corporate corruption, he couldn't stop thinking about the real maintenance workers he'd met, how their genuine experiences would now inform every aspect of his performance. You're unusually quiet today, noted Pat, his longtime makeup artist, as she applied subtle touches to make him look more worn down and tired. Everything okay? Kevin met her eyes in the mirror. Just thinking about the people I'm representing in this role. I want to get it right, Pat smiled. That's why you're good at what you do. You care. By the time Kevin stepped onto the set, he was 40 minutes late. He found the director, Helen Wright, reviewing footage with the cinematographer. I'm sorry I'm late, Kevin began. Something happened at the hotel. Helen waved away his apology. Lisa from the Grand Palace called to explain. Said you gave quite the speech this morning. Kevin was surprised. She called you? We go way back, Helen explained. College roommates. She's the one who suggested their hotel when we needed accommodations for the cast. She studied his face. She also said you might bring something extra to today's scenes. I hope so, Kevin replied. Helen clapped her hands together. Well then, let's see what you've got. We're shooting the confrontation scene today, where your character finally stands up to the executives who've been treating him like he's invisible. Kevin nodded, suddenly eager to get to work. I'm ready. The scene called for David Hayes to interrupt a board meeting to expose evidence of toxic waste dumping he'd discovered while cleaning the executive offices. On paper, it was already a powerful moment, the invisible man forcing himself to be seen. But now Kevin had something real to draw from. Helen called for quiet on the set. The actors playing the board members took their places around an imposing conference table, nearly identical to the one in the hotel's meeting room that morning. Action, Helen called. Kevin entered the boardroom as David Hayes, still in his janitor's uniform but standing straight and tall. The room fell silent as he walked to the head of the table, exactly the way the hotel meeting room had gone quiet when he'd entered with Lisa. I know you don't see me, he began, his voice quiet but firm. I'm the man who empties your trash and cleans your toilets. I'm the guy you walk past without a glance. I'm the one you talk around not to. He placed a folder on the table just as he'd placed his keycard down that morning. But I see you. I see what you're doing. And now, everyone else will see it too. The scene continued with the executives first dismissing him, then trying to threaten him, and finally realizing the power had shifted. By the time Helen called cut, the entire crew was silent, many wiping away tears. Helen approached Kevin, her expression a mixture of awe and professional satisfaction. I don't know what happened at that hotel, but whatever it was, bottle it. That was extraordinary. The rest of the day's shooting went equally well. Kevin found himself accessing emotions and understanding that had been theoretical before, but were now grounded in lived experience. By the time they wrapped for the day, the buzz around the set was that they were making something special. Back at the hotel that evening, Kevin found a handwritten note waiting in his suite. It was from Raymond, the assistant manager who had humiliated him in the lobby. Mr. Reed. It read, After this morning's meeting, I spent the day shadowing our maintenance staff. I owe you and them an apology. If you're willing, I'd like to speak with you about some changes we're considering for our staff policies. Respectfully, Raymond Phillips. Kevin smiled as he set down the note. The lesson had landed where it needed to. A knock at his door revealed Lisa holding a tablet. Hope I'm not disturbing you, she said, but I thought you might want to see this. She handed him the tablet, which showed the hotel's internal messaging system. The main announcement, posted by the general manager, outlined new policies effective immediately. Staff would now use all entrances freely. Standardized uniforms were being reconsidered to be less hierarchical, and a staff recognition program was being implemented. This is incredible, Kevin said. All this happened because of this morning? Lisa shook her head. No, it happened because for years our staff has been suggesting these changes, but no one in management was listening. Your speech just made us finally hear them. Kevin handed back the tablet. "Thank you for showing me this, and for helping set it up. Actually," Lisa said, "there's something else. Word about what happened has spread to other hotels. 3 general managers have called me today asking if you'd consider speaking to their staffs as well." Kevin laughed in surprise. "I'm not a motivational speaker." "No," Lisa agreed. "You're something better. You're someone who lived on both sides of the divide, even briefly, and can talk about what that taught you. People respond to that kind of authenticity." Kevin thought about it. His schedule during filming was packed, but this felt important in a way that transcended his usual obligations. "Let me talk to my team," he said finally. "Maybe we can work something out." After Lisa left, Kevin stood by the window of his suite looking out at the city lights. He thought about how differently his hotel stay had turned out from what he'd expected. He'd come seeking research for a role and found something much more meaningful, a chance to make a small but real difference in how people treated each other. His phone buzzed with a text from Helen. "Whatever magic you found today, bring more tomorrow." Kevin smiled. The movie they were making might reach millions of people with its message. But sometimes change started smaller, with one person deciding to see someone they'd previously looked past, with one moment of recognition that could shift everything. He thought of the maintenance worker who had started the applause that morning, of Raymond's note, of the housekeeper who'd made herself smaller to avoid notice. Invisible people choosing to be seen, visible people learning to truly see others. As an actor, Kevin had always known the power of stories to change how people saw the world. Now he understood that the most powerful stories were the ones that changed how you saw yourself in relation to others, the ones that reminded you that every person, regardless of their role or status or uniform, deserved to be treated with dignity. That was a story worth telling both on screen and off, and tomorrow, he would continue doing exactly that. 2 weeks passed in a blur of filming, hotel meetings, and unexpected opportunities. Kevin's performance continued to impress everyone on set, bringing an authenticity to the role that went beyond his usual high standards. Helen had even mentioned Oscar potential during a private conversation after a particularly powerful scene. But it was what happened off-camera that surprised Kevin most. With the production team's blessing, he'd begun visiting other hotels in the city during his off hours, speaking with staff and management about the invisible hierarchies that shaped their workplaces. What had started as a one-time learning experience was evolving into something like a mission. Today he was back at the Grand Palace for what had become a weekly check-in with Lisa and the staff. They'd been implementing changes gradually, some small, like removing the staff-only signs from service elevators, and some more substantial, like creating mixed-team focus groups where housekeepers and executives work together to solve hotel problems. The guest satisfaction scores are actually up 5%. Lisa told Kevin as they walked through the kitchen, where the head chef was teaching a cooking class to a mixed group of staff from different departments. Turns out when employees feel valued, guests have better experiences too. Kevin nodded, watching as a maintenance worker expertly diced vegetables alongside a front desk supervisor. Makes sense. Hard to make others feel important when you're made to feel invisible. They continued their tour, stopping to chat with various employees. Kevin noticed that Raymond, the assistant manager who'd once humiliated him, was now one of the most enthusiastic supporters of the new approach. Today he was helping a housekeeper learn the hotel's booking software after she'd expressed interest in cross-training for the front desk. "You've started something special here," Lisa said as they headed toward her office. "The general manager of the Regency downtown called me yesterday. They're completely revamping their staff policies based on what we've shared." "That's great," Kevin replied, though his mind was elsewhere. Something had been bothering him all morning, a nagging thought he couldn't quite articulate. Lisa noticed his distraction. "Everything okay with the film?" "The film's great," Kevin assured her. "It's just, I keep thinking about what happens when the cameras stop rolling. When I'm not here anymore." Lisa gestured for him to take a seat as they reached her office. "You're worried this will all fade away once you leave?" Kevin nodded. "I've seen it happen before. People get excited about change, but then routine takes over and everything slides back to how it was." Lisa considered this, then smiled slightly. "I had the same concern. That's why I've been documenting everything. The changes, the results, the feedback from staff and guests." She turned her computer monitor so Kevin could see a detailed spreadsheet. Numbers don't lie. When management sees that these changes are actually improving our bottom line, they'll want to keep them. Kevin leaned forward, studying the screen. That's smart. I learned from the best, Lisa replied. My father ran hotels for 40 years. He always said that good hospitality isn't about fancy lobbies. It's about how people treat each other. Guests and staff alike. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Tom, Kevin's driver. Sorry to interrupt, Tom said, but there's a situation downstairs you might want to handle personally. Kevin and Lisa exchanged glances before following Tom to the lobby. There, they found a commotion centered around a well-dressed older man berating a young bellhop. Even from a distance, Kevin could see the bellhop's face flushed with embarrassment as the man loudly complained about having to wait for assistance with his luggage. Do you have any idea who I am? The man demanded, his voice carrying across the marble floor. I could buy and sell this entire hotel. Kevin recognized him immediately. Victor Hargrove, a famous producer known equally for his blockbuster films and his difficult personality. They'd worked together briefly years ago, and Kevin had sworn never to repeat the experience. Hotel guests were staring, staff were freezing in place, and the young bellhop looked close to tears. Raymond was hurrying over from the front desk, clearly preparing to placate the irate VIP at the bellhop's expense. Kevin felt a familiar tension rising. 2 weeks ago, he might have kept walking, not wanting to get involved in someone else's drama. But something had changed in him. I should handle this, he said quietly to Lisa. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Just like we practiced. Kevin approached the scene, positioning himself beside the bellhop. Victor, he called, his voice warm and friendly. What a surprise seeing you here. Victor Hargrove turned, momentarily thrown off his tirade. Recognition dawned on his face. Kevin Reed? What are you doing here? Filming just around the corner, Kevin replied easily, placing a supportive hand on the bellhop's shoulder. I see you've met my friend Andy here, one of the hotel's best staff members. The young bellhop looked at Kevin with shock and gratitude. Victor seemed confused by this development. Your friend? Absolutely, Kevin continued smoothly. Andy here has been incredibly helpful during my stay. The whole team has. He gestured around at the watching staff members. In fact, the Grand Palace has the best service team I've experienced in years of traveling. Victor's demeanor shifted slightly, calculation replacing anger. As a producer, he was always aware of relationships and influence in the industry. Berating someone Kevin had just claimed as a friend suddenly seemed less appealing. Well, Victor said, his voice notably softer, I was just explaining to Andy that I have a meeting in 20 minutes and need my luggage taken up immediately. I understand completely, Kevin replied. Then turning to Andy, would you mind showing Mr. Hargrove to his room? I know you'll take excellent care of him. The bellhop straightened his shoulders, newfound confidence visible in his stance. Right away, sir, Mr. Hargrove, if you'll follow me, I'll have you settled in no time. As Andy gathered Victor's luggage with practiced efficiency, the producer leaned toward Kevin. Having dinner with Michael tonight to discuss the new project. You should join us. I'll check my schedule, Kevin replied non-committally. Enjoy your stay, Victor. As the pair walked toward the elevators, the lobby gradually returned to normal. Staff members exchanged knowing glances and several nodded appreciatively to Kevin. Raymond approached, looking impressed. That was masterfully handled. Mr. Hargrove is a regular guest known for challenging behavior. Just applying what we've been discussing these past weeks, Kevin replied. Everyone deserves respect, both the bellhop and Mr. Hargrove. Sometimes people just need a gentle reminder of that. Later that evening, after returning to the film set for a night shoot, Kevin couldn't stop thinking about the incident. The look on Andy's face when Kevin had stood beside him, rather than joining the VIP and looking down on him, that moment of dignity reclaimed, felt more rewarding than any scene they'd filmed that day. During a break between setups, Helen found Kevin reviewing his script under the bright lights. You seem different lately, she observed, handing him a coffee. More centered? Kevin accepted the cup gratefully. Just gaining some perspective. Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. This film is turning into something extraordinary. She hesitated, then added, the studio executives are visiting tomorrow. They're hearing the buzz and want to see for themselves. Kevin nodded, sipping his coffee. Studio visits were routine, though often stressful for the crew. One more thing, Helen added casually. Victor Hargrove might be joining them. Apparently he ran into you at your hotel and called the head of the studio singing your praises. Said you were surprisingly grounded and exactly what the industry needs more of. Kevin nearly choked on his coffee. Victor Hargrove said that? Helen shrugged. Shocking, I know. That man hasn't said a kind word about anyone since 1997. After she walked away, Kevin pulled out his phone and found a text from Lisa. Andy wanted me to thank you. Said it was the first time in 3 years of hotel work that anyone had stood up for him. You made a difference today, Kevin smiled. Typing back. Just paying forward what I learned from all of you. As he put away his phone and prepared for the next scene, Kevin reflected on how differently things had turned out from what he'd expected. He'd come to this hotel seeking insight into a character, a man invisible to the powerful until he found his voice. Instead, he'd discovered something about himself and about the world around him. The irony wasn't lost on him. A famous actor had needed to become invisible to truly see others. And in seeing them, really seeing them, he'd found a different kind of role to play, one that continued even when the camera stopped rolling. Tomorrow would bring studio executives, perhaps even Victor Hargrove again. But Kevin felt ready for whatever came next. He was no longer just playing a part. He was living a truth he'd discovered under the most unexpected circumstances, and that made all the difference. 6 months later, Kevin stood backstage at the Grand Palace Hotel's newly renovated ballroom, listening to the hum of conversation from the packed audience. The hotel was hosting its first annual Excellence in Service Award ceremony, an event that had grown far beyond anyone's original vision. What had started as a small staff recognition program had expanded when other hotels in the city asked to participate. Now, hospitality workers from 27 hotels across the metropolitan area were gathered to celebrate outstanding service and innovative workplace practices. More importantly, the event was being live-streamed to hotels in 6 other cities planning to launch similar programs. Nervous? Lisa asked, appearing beside him in an elegant blue dress, a far cry from her usual business attire. Kevin adjusted his tie. A little. Different kind of audience than I'm used to. Lisa smiled. You've spoken to hotel staffs across the country these past months. This isn't so different. This one matters more, Kevin replied simply. The truth was, Kevin had given countless speeches since that first morning in the staff meeting room, but tonight felt special. Tonight wasn't about a famous actor sharing wisdom. It was about celebrating the very people whose lives and work had taught him so much. From the stage, Raymond's voice called out, and now, to present our final award of the evening, the man who inspired this entire movement, Mr. Kevin Reed. The applause was thunderous as Kevin walked onto the stage. He spotted familiar faces in the audience. Andy, the bellhop, was there, seated with his family. The older housekeeper who'd told him about making herself smaller was at a front table. And in the back, trying to remain inconspicuous, was Victor Hargrove, who had surprisingly become one of the program's biggest financial supporters after his encounter with Kevin months ago. Thank you, Kevin said as the applause finally quieted. 6 months ago, I walked into this hotel wearing a maintenance uniform, hoping to understand a character I was playing. What I didn't expect was how that simple act would change my perspective forever. He paused, looking out at the attentive faces. The film we were making, Invisible Man, opened last week. The critics have been kind. They've called my performance transformative and the most authentic work of my career. Kevin smiled slightly. What they don't know is that any authenticity in that performance came from the people in this room and others, like you across the city, the people who taught me what it truly means to be seen or unseen based solely on what you're wearing or what job you do. Kevin gestured to the award sitting on a pedestal beside him, a beautiful crystal piece shaped like 2 hands, reaching toward each other. Tonight's final award is for transformative leadership, for the person who has done the most to create workplaces where everyone is valued, everyone is visible, and everyone has dignity. When Lisa first suggested creating this award, I assumed it would go to a hotel executive or manager, someone with position and power. He picked up the award, feeling its weight in his hands. Instead, the committee unanimously selected someone who never held a management title, someone who transformed his workplace from the ground up. Kevin smiled as he saw the surprise rippling through the audience. Joe Mendez started as a dishwasher at the Westbrook Hotel 15 years ago. When the hotel implemented their staff suggestion program after hearing about our initiative here, Joe submitted 23 ideas in the first month. Every single one focused on how to make invisible workers more visible, from rotating staff through different departments to understand each other's jobs, to having executives work alongside maintenance crews once a month, to creating a system where every employee, regardless of position, could submit guest service solutions directly to management. Kevin looked toward a stunned-looking middle-aged man in the audience, who was being nudged by his equally surprised tablemates. Joe didn't stop at suggestions. He volunteered to lead the implementation team. He created training materials. He mediated conflicts when people resisted change. And he did all this while continuing to work his regular shifts in the kitchen. The result? The Westbrook now has the highest staff retention rate and guest satisfaction scores in their company's history. Kevin gestured for Joe to join him on stage. The man walked up slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and pride. Joe, this award recognizes that transformation doesn't always come from the top down. Sometimes the most powerful changes start with one person who refuses to remain invisible and helps others find their visibility too. As Kevin handed over the award, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Joe, clearly overwhelmed, leaned toward the microphone. "I'm just a dishwasher," he said simply. "But Mr. Reed taught us all that just doesn't belong in front of any job title. We're all just people, doing our best to make others feel welcomed and valued." Kevin stepped back, content to let Joe have his moment. This was what it had all been about. Not his growth or his performance or his awards, but the ripple effects that had spread outward, touching lives he would never even know about. After the ceremony, the ballroom transitioned to a celebration. Staff members from competing hotels mingled freely, sharing stories and ideas. Kevin found himself surrounded by people wanting to express gratitude, not for his films or his fame, but for seeing them when others had looked past them. Later, as the crowd thinned, Kevin found himself standing with Lisa near the windows overlooking the city lights. "You know, my film opens in wide release tomorrow," Kevin said. "The studio is projecting it will be my biggest opening weekend ever." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations. Though I'm guessing that's not what you're most proud of right now." Kevin smiled. "Not even close." He nodded toward the ballroom where Joe was showing his award to a group of young hotel workers, his face animated as he encouraged them to share their own ideas for change. "The film will be in theaters for a few weeks, maybe months if we're lucky. But what's happening here? That could last." "It already is," Lisa confirmed. 3 hotel chains have revised their staff policies. 2 have eliminated separate entrances and uniforms that create artificial hierarchies. 1 is implementing a profit-sharing program for all employees regardless of position. She touched his arm lightly. "And it all started because you were willing to experience humiliation instead of pulling rank that night in our lobby." Kevin shook his head. "I was just researching a role." "You were," Lisa agreed. "But then you chose to do something with what you learned. That made all the difference." Their conversation was interrupted by Raymond, who approached with a tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to see this right away." He handed the tablet to Kevin. On the screen was an advance review of Invisible Man from one of the industry's most respected critics. The headline read, "Reed delivers career-defining performance in film that challenges how we see each other." Kevin skimmed the review, but one paragraph caught his eye. In the film's most powerful scene, Reed's character confronts the executives who have ignored him and his warnings about corporate corruption. "You never saw me until I became a problem," he tells them. "But I was always here, doing the work that kept your world running." It's a moment that transcends the screen, challenging viewers to consider who they might be overlooking in their own lives. In an industry often criticized for shallowness, Reed has delivered something unexpectedly profound, a mirror in which we might all glimpse our better selves. Kevin handed the tablet back to Raymond. "Sounds like they got it." "Got what?" Raymond asked. "The point," Kevin replied, "that seeing people, really seeing them, can change everything." As the evening drew to a close, Kevin found himself back on stage, this time addressing just the hotel staff who were helping with cleanup. No cameras, no press, no awards, just the people who would stay long after the guests had gone, making everything right again for tomorrow. "Thank you," he told them simply. Not just for tonight, but for everything you've taught me these past months. I came here looking to understand a character, but I found something much more valuable. What's that? Called out a voice from the back. Kevin smiled. A better version of myself. And a reminder that sometimes the most important roles we play aren't on a screen or a stage, but in how we treat the people around us every day. As he left the hotel that night, Kevin paused in the lobby where his journey had begun 6 months earlier. The same marble floors gleamed under the same crystal chandeliers, but everything else had changed. The staff moved with new confidence. Guests were engaged in actual conversations with hotel workers rather than looking through them, and the invisible walls that had once separated people had begun to crumble. Kevin had arrived as a famous actor researching a role. He was leaving as something else entirely, not more or less than he had been, but different in ways that mattered. He had learned to truly see others, and in doing so had allowed himself to be truly seen as well, and that he realized was the most transformative role of all.